Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from The Federalist dated October 24th. And yes, it's going to be more about what's going on in the Middle East right now, specifically with Israel and Hamas. So this article is called Not All Palestinians Are Hamas, but Hamas Does Represent the Palestinians. And the reason I wanted to talk about this article is because you see a lot of talking heads out there, including the president, that specifically says, like, well, kind of this sort of thing. So I wanted to go into like exactly how much uh, of the Palestinian Gazan society is run by Hamas, and just kind of kind of this headline here. I guess I'm not. It's early in the morning when I'm recording this, so my thoughts are still kind of all over the place. But might as well, instead of me trying to blabber incessantly and not go through the article, let's go through the article. It says Biden's wrong that the group is an outlier. That's Hamas. It says that's why any revival of a two-state solution diplomacy will only lead to more bloodshed. And then into the article itself, it says President Joe Biden's attitude toward the war launched by the Hamas terrorist organization against Israel has been somewhat contradictory. Since the October 7th attacks, he has spoken in a manner that has reaffirmed the alliance between the two countries in an emotional and empathetic manner that was entirely appropriate to the tragic circumstances. In aligning the United States behind the cause of eliminating the terror group that has covered Gaza as an independent Palestinian state in all but name since 2007, he also unexpectedly embraced a position that was opposed by the liberal commentariat that has unflinchingly backed him throughout his catastrophic presidency. Yeah, that's being mild. Catastrophic presidency. I mean, that's actually being really nice to him. It says, but he also sought to place conditions on Israel's efforts to deal with the threat to its security in such a manner as to call into question whether the goal of decisively defeating Hamas is going to be possible. And scolding Israel about not hitting civilian targets in Gaza was nothing more than virtue signaling, since Israel needs no such advice. Yeah, because part of what they do is that they call ahead to places to say, hey, you know, you guys might want to leave here. I mean, we see them already giving evacuation orders for like the northern part of Gaza for all the civilians, and the people that are keeping those civilians there are Hamas, actually, because they want the dead bodies. And this is very easy information that anybody can go look up at any time. So, continuing, it says, indeed, the Pentagon has sent officers to Israel to get its instruction on how to avoid civilian casualties because its procedures are as rigorous as that of any army in the world. Because under the guise of humanitarian concerns, Biden demanded that Israel allowed convoys with food, water, and medical equipment into Gaza. That essentially allowed the resupply of Hamas's heavily armed force, not just essentials to the civilian population, are under its control. Yeah, that was like when I saw that, I was like, okay, so we're just going to give Hamas more crap. Like, this is just for them. Like, why, like, we're basically we're essentially funding both sides of this little war here, is what it looks like to me, because Hamas is not an outlier. As part of the justification of Biden's attempt to micromanage Israel's national defense, he has repeatedly insisted, as he did in his October 20th Oval Office speech, that he sees Hamas as something of an outlier. The vast majority of Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. It says publications such as New York Magazine have argued the same, and I'm guessing this article very shortly is about to go in why that statement is not really true. So let's see what it does down here. Says this sounds right to Americans who find it hard to believe that ordinary Palestinians could possibly support a group that Biden rightly compared to ISIS because of the barbarous crimes it committed on October 7th, which include the murder of entire families, including infants, as well as rape, torture, and the desecration of corpses. There's more than 700, more than 200, sorry about that, people were also reportedly dragged into captivity in Gaza, including Americans, two of whom were released on October 20th and are being held as hostages. It would be nice to think Hamas is unrepresentative Palestinian opinion. If that were true, then the prospects for Israeli-Palestinian peace in the aftermath of the current fighting or even the foreseeable future would be a lot less bleak, but the facts say otherwise. And here's the point where you hear like what I said at the very beginning, that Biden and a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, Hamas doesn't represent the Palestinians," but it's kind of like, no, they kind of do represent the Palestinians kind of overwhelmingly. So it says Hamas's leadership views Palestinian civilian casualties as a political asset rather than a calamity, which is very, very true. And that's kind of a disgusting way to think about it. But again, the folks over there, they don't think the same way we do. Their mindset is totally different than ours. It says the terrorist group hides behind institutions such as hospitals and schools, including those run by the United Nations, as cover for their activities. And before I even go to that last sentence there, even as I'm recording this, I think either yesterday or the day before, it was revealed that Hamas's main military base was underneath the biggest hospital in Gaza. So they're using the people in the hospital as human shields, essentially. This is the use of civilian population as human shields. Well, there you go. To make it harder for the Israelis to strike at their military assets. So again, I tell you, who are the bad guys here? Like it shouldn't be that hard to figure out. So, but there is little or no evidence that this has created opposition among those who have dwelt under the tyrannical Islamist rule for the last 16 years. Says Biden's assertions about the Palestinians and Hamas have begun to sound like President George W. Bush's reflexive use of the phrase that Islam is a religion of peace that had nothing to do with Al Qaeda's Islamism, as his administration repeated endlessly after the 9/11 attacks. Biden's argument would be stronger if Palestinians didn't routinely take to the streets to celebrate terror attacks against Israel, or I would say against us as well after 9/11. Says the cheers for the Hamas murderers when they returned in triumph to Gaza on October 7th, where they displayed their captives and the corpses of some of the Jews they had slain, only ended once Israel's strikes against the terrorists commenced. So it says voting and polling in Gaza. So it seems like we're kind of getting to uh, the point here, which is that Hamas, those or Palestinians are uh, represented by Hamas. Pretty overwhelmingly so. It also requires us to forget that Hamas defeated the supposedly more moderate Fatah party, whose leader Mahmoud Abbas is the president of the Palestinian Authority, in the 2006 Palestinian legislative election. That vote was held at Bush's behest during the high point of America's democracy advocacy fever. Hamas did especially well in Gaza, and that was the impetus for its bloody 2007 coup that evicted Fatah from the street. So it says Israel withdrew every settler and settlement from Gaza in 2005 in the hopes that the gesture would help lead to peace. Palestinians were given autonomy. But by 2007, they had established an Islamic tyranny led by Hamas, dedicated to armed struggle to overturn the occupation. I guess I say it's an occupation, but it's kind of hard to be an occupation when the people you're saying are occupying you aren't even there. Okay? That would be like me right now sitting in my apartment, someone trying to say, like, I'm occupying their house, and it's like, no, I'm kind of over here. I don't have anything to do with your house. It's the same thing. This and by occupation, Hamas says, and both its founding charter and ongoing statements, this means destroying Israel no matter where its borders might be drawn. Okay, again, I ask you, who are the villains here? It says since 2007, Hamas rule in Gaza has for the most part gone unchallenged, except for groups like the Iran-controlled Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is, if anything, even more radical and violent. Oh, that's fantastic. It says since the population still views Jews as colonists and occupiers, and not just those who live in areas that were held by the Arab states before the Six-Day War, Palestinian political culture valorizes terrorism and treats those who shed Jewish blood as having gained political legitimacy. Here we go. So this is the kind of point I think we were getting to here. This polling shows that 57% of Gazans view Hamas positively, and 52% of those in the West Bank agree with them. A 2021 poll found 53% of Palestinians say Hamas should represent them. Says, though the apologists dismissed the 2006 results as ancient history, that polling validates Abbas's refusal to hold another election. He is currently serving the 19th year of the 4-year term to which he was elected in 2005, and his fears about being beaten by Hamas explain that long pause. So he's in the 19th year of a 4-year term, of course. Well, dictators do that. So can't say I'm really surprised by that whole thing. Hamas's unabashed calls for Israel's destruction and terrorism are more popular than Fatah's more equivocal position, in which it claims to support peace, but has turned down every offer of statehood and independence because that required that it also recognized Israel's legitimacy, which yeah, it's never going to do. As the Palestinian Authority continues its pay-for-slay policies, in which all those who commit terrorist acts against Israelis, including the October 7th terrorists, and are serving time in prison time, are eligible for salaries and their families get pensions. Yeah, I think that would incentivize the terrorism as well, so that certainly doesn't help things get better. Says those seeking to draw a distinction between Hamas and ordinary Palestinians must also reckon with the way the Islamist group has influenced religious life in the West Bank as well as Gaza, which it directly controls. Says the Palestinian Authority's religious ministry issued a directive to all mosques in the West Bank to include a hadith from the Quran in their October 20th sermons that preaches how the redemption of humanity is contingent on Muslims killing and eventually exterminating all Jews. This means that the same views that fueled the crimes of October 7th are considered mainstream by even those Muslim authorities that Washington considers to be under the control of a moderate Palestinian group. Yeah, calling for the extermination of an entire group of people doesn't really seem like a position. Seems like one hell of an extremist position, if you ask me. But again, I'm not the smartest person in the world, so I could be totally wrong there. Says this points to a fact that the U.S. foreign policy establishment is committed to ignoring. Hamas's Gaza statelet is living proof that, under the current circumstances, a two-state solution is a guarantee of continued bloodshed, not a path to peace. Correct. Yeah, I think the two-state solution is out the window at this point after what happened. Does those celebrities calling for an immediate ceasefire aren't just demanding the equivalent of a halt to U.S. operations against Al Qaeda on September 12th, 2001? They're also following Biden's lead in pretending that most Palestinians don't support terrorism or aren't committed to continuing their long war to destroy the only Jewish state on the planet, an end they know can only be achieved by genocide. Hamas's popularity doesn't negate the right of Palestinians to be treated with dignity, and all civilian casualties in war to be mourned and, if possible, avoided wherever possible. Fully agree. Says, but if this conflict is to end, that will only be possible by decisive actions that lead to Hamas's complete and total defeat. It also depends on the acknowledgement by Palestinians that, like the Germans and Japanese in 1945, the ideologies that have dominated politics were mistaken and must be abandoned. The pretense that Palestinians aren't supportive of Hamas will make that impossible. Until Biden realizes he is wrong about Palestinian public opinion, his pious optimism about Hamas's unpopularity may do a great deal of harm. Yeah, and Biden hasn't exactly been right on foreign policy like ever. In fact, I remember going back to like even the Obama years. I guess this kind of is the Obama years again, repeat or redo. That Biden's just been wrong about everything on foreign policy. Like that's like his thing, his bugaboo is that he's just, I mean, besides his presidency now where he's been literally wrong about every single thing, but his the knock on him all the way back to I think even his Senate days is that he's never been right about a single foreign policy thing in his life. So obviously he's wrong about this. So that being said, it's been a long article. So let me know what you think in the comments below about this. Let me know what you think about, do you think all of the Palestinians are represented by Hamas? How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.